everybody, welcome back. Jeff here. I am here today to answer an age-old question I'm sure many of us have had, and I myself have had, is what can I grow, and if the things that I personally want to grow will grow where I live. So the first big thing I'm going to be explaining today is plant hardiness zones. Those are going to be the biggest defining factor in what you can grow. I'm going to go over regional planting charts because that's going to give you a lot of help in knowing what to do with what you want to grow. And I'm going to be giving you a couple of little ways you can kind of cheat the system a little bit and get away with growing things at a little bit earlier times than should be appropriate, or get away with growing some things that you might not normally be able to grow where you live. So, like I said, the first thing we need to go over is plant hardiness zones. So if you don't know what those are, basically North America is split up into 11 zones across the continent, and it's based off of minimum winter temperatures on average. So each zone, say zone 1, which is the coldest zone, going all the way to zone 11, which is your hottest zone. Zone 1, its minimum average winter temperature is minus 50 degrees Celsius. I'm going to be going in Celsius because I'm Canadian, but I will throw up some conversions for you. So for zone 1, which is our coldest, its minimum average winter temperature is 50 degrees Celsius. That's negative. If you go all the way to zone 11, its average is plus 40 degrees Celsius. So that is way in the tropics of Hawaii. So it goes all the way from the Arctic Circle pretty much all the way into the extreme tropics down in Hawaii. So there's a huge range in between, but you will be able to find, if you go and look up North American hardiness zones, and you can Google that, you'll find lots of different maps, and they're all accurate for the most part. You can find where you live in North America and the number or the zone that corresponds to that. So when you go out to the garden centers or you're looking at plants that you want to grow, you'll normally find a number that's associated with that plant, and that is its hardiness zone. So if the plant that you want to grow, or the plant that you found, shopping, has the number that is associated with where you live, you will be able to grow that plant. So I'll show you a plant tag from something that I bought last year, just a bush. And so you'll see there, that number, that zone 5 to 9, that means that if you live in hardiness zones 5 ranging to 9, you can grow that plant. So for me, I am in zone 8 in coastal British Columbia, and there's lots we can grow here. So that means I can grow that because 8 is within that range. So again, whenever you're going shopping or you're looking at plants, just look for the hardiness zone number and then just double check that you live somewhere in the range it's going to give you, and that means you can grow that plant. Now, depending on where you live, if you are one number off, sometimes you can get away with growing things that aren't exactly in your range. But if you have a really hard winter, you might lose that plant. So you're always taking a chance. If you're 1 or 2 numbers off of that zone range and you pick it anyways, you could have success or you could lose that plant. Now again, with the plant hardiness zones, I'm in zone 8, and for Canada, that's a pretty good zone. There's lots we can grow here. I can grow things like tomatoes, I can grow things like peppers, I can grow things like almost any vegetable that you can find in a grocery store, I can pretty much grow here. Now, my growing season might be a bit shorter than, say, somebody who lives in California, but most things I can get away with. But say if you live somewhere in northern Manitoba, you're going to have a much lower zone than I do, so you might not be able to grow things like hot peppers or tomatoes, or you might be able to, but your harvests might be much smaller than, say, if you lived where I do, or like say people who live in California or something like that. So that's pretty much the basics of plant hardiness zones. That's going to be, like I said, the biggest deciding factor in if you can grow those plants that you want to grow, or when you're looking at things that you want to grow. The other big resource that you should look at is regional planting charts. So now that you have made kind of a list of things that you want or you can grow where you are, you want to know what to do with them. So regional planting charts are basically a list of crops that you can grow for your area, and it will tell you when to plant, when to seed indoors, when to seed outdoors, when to transplant, should you grow under cover. It's a very good resource. Now, 2 sources that I really like to use are WestCoast seeds. They're based out of British Columbia, but their regional planting charts, they have ones for British Columbia, for all across Canada, depending on where you live, also for the Pacific Northwest of the States and the Eastern United States, and I believe a bit of the Midwest. They also have charts for those. So even if you're not in Canada, I highly recommend checking out West Coast Seeds because they probably have a resource that will suit where you are. Another really long-standing one that some of you might be familiar with is the Farmer's Almanac. So you can type in your city, your province, your state, your zip code, your postal code, and it will pop up a regional planting chart for where you are. And again, it's basically does the exact same thing as the West Coast Seeds one. They look a little bit different from each other, but basically, if you don't know when to plant, or if you should start indoors, if you should start outdoors, if you should cover the seed with something when you plant, it will tell you. And you can pretty much look up any crop that's suitable for the area that you're looking in, and you'll be able to find information on it. So again, that's West Coast Seeds, and that's the Farmer's Almanac. Those are two invaluable resources that I highly recommend checking out. So the other thing I was gonna let you guys know is a couple little ways that you can kind of cheat the system and you can get away with planting things a little bit earlier than it'll say on the charts, or if you're a couple zones away from something and it's not really, appropriate to grow where you live, but you want to try it anyways, these are ways that you can kind of get away with doing that. So in my previous videos, I've explained the things like these tunnels and these frost blankets. So that's one really good way that you can increase temperatures, because again, kind of the zones and what you can plant, that's based on temperature for the most part. This will give you earlier spring temperatures for seeding and for early crops for frost protection. So I highly recommend, if you want to try some things a little bit earlier in the year, to look at things like tunnels and using frost protection blankets, or getting small greenhouses. A small greenhouse, you could extend your seasons or grow a lot of different things that you would normally not be able to grow. Or you can use, again, tunnels but with a plastic cover. But using things like covers, tunnels, greenhouses, or having an area in your house that you can start things inside of, and using, say, like a mini seed starting greenhouse that you've seen in another one of my videos, those are ways that you can kind of cheat the system and start things, a little bit earlier and get them off to a stronger start than if you had gone without. Or again, those are ways, especially with something like a greenhouse, that you can grow things that aren't appropriate for your hardiness zone, but with those tools you can still kind of get away with growing them, and you can have a lot of fun doing experiments with those kinds of things. If you have the room, or if you got the money wherever you're living, if you can play around with those kinds of things, it's a lot of fun. So that's pretty much it. That kind of is the basics of what you can grow and when you, like I said, what you can grow, and then kind of how to find the resources for knowing when you can plant, and kind of what to do with things once you've kind of made a list of what you can grow in your area. But that is basically the basics of everything that I've just gone over. So thank you again so much for tuning in, everybody. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it, but whatever you choose to do, you are still awesome, and I hope you have an amazing day.